In this video, we're going to show you how to install the catalytic converter on your Nissan Frontier, located on the passenger side of the engine. Now underneath here on the passenger side, you're going to locate the rear O2 sensor. This is the downstream. Use a 22mm wrench, and we want to try and loosen this. Now what we're doing is just going to break this free from the pipe. Before we continue to spin this out, we're going to follow the wire up, and it goes to a connector just a few inches up on the side here. Now if you follow the wire up, we have the wiring harness right here. There's a little tab on the back side. Now normally you can pinch that with your thumb and pull the connectors apart, but this has some mileage on it. Some sand is probably stuck in there. So I'm just using some hose pliers to kind of get around, and I'm just going to use that to assist in pinching this little lock tab and then pull the other connector out of it. Just like that. Now with this disconnected, we can go ahead and unscrew the O2 sensor from the pipe. Ideally what you want to do is hold that wire and rotate the wire with it. You don't want it to twist on itself. And go ahead and set that aside. Behind our rear cat here, we have two bolts. You want to go ahead and remove those. Ours has already been fiddled with before, so we have a 17mm here and a 16mm bolt here. Whatever you have for hardware, you want to go ahead, loosen, and remove. Now on the front side here, we have a front cat bolted to the flange here, and then our rear cat we were working on. We're going to use our 14mm wrench, loosen and remove the bolts. As you remove the second bolt, the pipe will probably want to drop down, so just be careful of that. Gently pry this apart, pull that down. Now go ahead and remove the pipe from the vehicle. Using a 21mm socket, go ahead, loosen and remove your lug nuts. Go ahead and grab that wheel, remove it, and set it aside. Our fender liner is broken on the inside, but if yours is not, loosen and remove the two 10mm bolts here and here. Phillips head screwdriver. If you have mud flaps on your vehicle, loosen these three. There's a fourth one just on the other side, on the bottom side of the fender. We're going to loosen and remove that. Now on the front side of the fender liner, there would normally be a screw here. Ours is missing. Follow it up, and there's going to be another one right here. Loosen and remove that. Once that's out, you're going to come on up. There's normally a retainer here, and then one right here. Ours are both missing. And just going to come on back, and there's a plastic retainer button right here. We're going to use our trim tool to go ahead and pop this out. Pop out the center. and pull out that button. Just kind of work the fender liner out. Work it from the inside of the fender and pull that out. Now, after you remove your wheel well liner, you're going to access your catalytic converter right through the frame. Here we have the O2 sensor, and then right behind the heat shield is the 3-bolt flange for the catalytic converter that we need to access. In order to get there, on the upper heat shield on the exhaust manifold is two 10mm bolts. We need to loosen and remove those, so we can go ahead and pull this back and get access to that flange. Disconnect your O2 sensor from the connector up in the back here. You're gonna reach up and press in on the little spring clip on the back. I'm gonna use a pair of pliers to reach up and gently grab the connector, push on that tab, and pull that out. We're gonna use our split O2 sensor socket here. We're gonna unthread the O2 sensor from the cat. Here we go. And once that breaks free, hold the sensor harness, and as you unthread it, you want to spin the harness with it. Remove that and set it aside. Go ahead and remove the heat shield back as far as you can. It gives you a limited amount of access to the bolts on the flange. We're going to use our 14mm sockets and gear wrenches to go ahead, loosen and remove these two upper bolts. Then we're going to go underneath and get to the third one on the back side. Now on ours, this upper one that I'm removing is a stud with a nut on it. We did spray these down with some rust penetrant to help them come off or come apart a little bit easier. So we're using our flexible head gear wrench on the other bolt here. It's actually a stud going the opposite way with a nut on it. Just like this one here, it's just facing the opposite way. Now on the bottom side here, we have our heat shield. We're just kind of pushing this out of the way. And here is that stud with a nut on the other side. Reach up with one hand underneath. Get that swivel head gear wrench on there. Remove that nut. Again, to work that catalytic converter down and out. Take your donut gasket. I'm going to tap this on. We're going to go ahead and remove our two studs from our catalytic converter using an inverted Torx bit number 10. Sometimes soaking these down with some rust penetrant or maybe a little bit of heat applied to the flange should help you get these out. Once we get these out, we're going to clean these up on our wire wheel machine. You can use a bristle brush or whatever you have. Just going to help with the installation of the nuts go on a bit smoother. Go ahead and install the studs. And go ahead and snug those into place. Feed the cat up from the bottom, line up those studs. And we're gonna get the nut started on the top here. Run that down as far as you can by hand, and that'll hold it in place. Go ahead and install the nuts on the other two studs here. Let's go ahead and tighten down our nuts here using our gear wrench. We'll move to the upper one. Now I want to try and tighten these evenly. So we'll snug them down all the way around, and we'll come back and go around one more time to tighten those down. Make sure these are good and tight. You want to do a visual inspection, make sure that the gap is pretty tight and evenly compressed all around. At this point here, all three of our studs and nuts are secured. Let's now install our heat shield. Line up the heat shield, get your bolts started. Now we have our third heat shield bolt down behind the control arm tower here. Get that started, and we're using our gear wrench. Go ahead and snug that down. This one here is a little bit more challenging to get installed, but it can be done. Then we could finish tightening up our upper heat shield bolts. Go ahead and snug those down. Good, and put your O2 sensor in. Now we put a little bit of anti-seize compound on the threads. Be sure not to get that on the sensor itself. Now if you have higher mileage, you want to go ahead and replace the O2 sensor while you're here. Go ahead and snug this down. Go ahead and run your sensor up to the connector up top, and we'll connect that. Press it in, you can hear it and feel it snap into place. Install your fender liner. What you want to do is basically just kind of tuck it up into place. Push the front one up and over. Bring the back around and tuck it inside the fender lip here. The lower portion of your fender liner is going to fit on the outside. Once you come up to this notch here, that's going to pop to the inside like so. So outside, inside, feed it around. And there's going to be normally two little plastic clips here that the fender liner will actually pop into. Good, and feed these into it. fender liner should fit behind the lip of the front bumper. On the back section here, we have our plastic push pin. Line that up. Pop that into place. Let's go ahead and install our back fender splash guard. Let's go ahead and line this up. We have 3 Phillips head screws here. Let's go ahead and just get these started. Once we get these 3 started here, we have our 4th one on the back side. So we're gonna thread those in a little bit. We're not gonna snug them down. We just wanna make sure that they are started as several threads. Let's go ahead and move to the other side and install the 4th screw on the back side. Gently snug that down. With that anchored, we can now tighten down the 3 on the other side. Go ahead and install the 2 10mm bolts here and here to anchor the front portion of your fender liner. Our fender liner was damaged and was missing a screw here when we received the vehicle. If you have the screw here and you removed it, go ahead and install it now. Grab your wheel, go ahead and line it up, set it into place. I'm going to start all of our lug nuts by hand. Once we have all these started, let's go ahead and snug them down. Let's go ahead and torque down our lug nuts to 98 foot-pounds. You want to do this in a crisscross pattern. You're going to take your cat and take the donut, fit that on. If you have a regular O-ring donut, it'll just fit right on this. If you have the tapered steel style here, you want that cone to be facing upward. Feed this up into place. Feed that flange in and over. Take your new gasket, slide this up into place. We did source replacement hardware for this. You can reuse your original hardware if you'd like. And make sure these are good and tight. Make sure there's no gap between the two flanges. Make sure it's nice and tight. Let's now go ahead and tighten the two up front. Let's tighten these two down. When tightening this here, you want to inspect in between, make sure that the gasket itself is crushed and sealed. And take your sensor. I'm going to thread that in. As we spin this in, you want to make sure that you spin the wire harness with it. We don't want that to bind up. Now we're using a 22mm wrench. Go ahead and tighten this down. Now once you feel it start to tighten down, you're going to feel the crush washer starting to collapse. You want to make sure that it is fully collapsed and that the O2 sensor is in there nice and tight. Go ahead and connect the O2 sensor harness here. Good, push it together. Make sure you feel it and hear it lock into place. Ours would have had a metal tab up top for you to secure that on, and you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.